Hello and welcome to another episode of the djproject Criterion Collection. And here we're going to talk about Spine 600, Anatomy of a Murder, directed by Otto Preminger, 1959. Now this is another film that represents that sort of current trend, if you can call it that, with Criterion of putting out more well-known titles, particularly within America. I've mentioned this with 12 Angry Men. This is another one of them. In fact, actually, I got both of them. I purchased both of them on the same day because I knew that they were both films that deal with the courts, and it would be an interesting sort of compare and contrast. And also considering that they came out within 2 years apart. This is a film that is one thing that I sort of mentioned in other instances, of how a film's life and reputation holds up over time. Usually when a film comes out, it's very much informed by its time, and the adjectives and the various superlatives you can throw at it are very much a reflection of its time. In this case, it was known at the time as being very edgy. The list is as follows. One, probably the biggest one, is that it openly challenged the Hays Code, and particularly in its subject matter and in its dialogue. The story is a small-time lawyer takes up a case to defend a army soldier who murdered a tavern owner because he had allegedly raped his wife. The fact that it is stated that clearly and that frankly that yes, somebody raped his wife, and no sugarcoating, no beating around the bush, so to speak. It says it up front, not in any kind of explicit manner. It's not dirty. It's just, again, it's very, very frank, and it's also something that you would find in a courtroom, or you hear that stated. They don't cover it up for decency's sake, because it's going to be filmed. So that's the big thing that was very prominent at the time. It also was very, it had very complex character portrayals. There's no black and white anything, and guilt and innocence is quite a complex affair. So there's no clear-cut heroes. In fact, the hero has its own complexities and ambiguities. He much rather go fishing rather than dealing with law practice. And this is James Stewart, by the way, who plays him. So, and also, this was a film that was shot on location. It was actually the whole story takes place in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and they shot everything there. There was no studios were employed in the making of this film. And finally, this was a film that used jazz as its score. Now, I mentioned Elevator to the Gallows as being an example of a film that used jazz as a score, whereas Louis Malle used Miles Davis, because he happened to be there. For Anatomy of a Murder, Otto Preminger used Duke Ellington. And in fact, Duke Ellington does make an appearance in the film as Pie Eye, in this one little place where I forget the lawyer's name, but where he plays piano. Really quick. Yeah, Paul Beagler. Anyways, so now those things were very, very true, and also, as you probably saw by the cover artwork, this is the very recognizable Saul Bass, who would most famously work with Hitchcock, particularly in Vertigo and Psycho, and also did the titles for Spartacus as well, and a few other films at the time. So this was contemporary for 1959. Now, usually what happens is when a film, as years pass on, and there's a considerable distance from that particular moment, does the film still hold up? Is there still something that you can extrapolate from the film that still makes it feel fresh and not as quaint? As I said before, certain films that establish certain conventions and certain help perpetuate certain tropes and ideas can sometimes feel a little quaint going back to the source because you've seen it played out in other films and just in general the culture. So when you see it, you gotta go, this is not really great. So does this film have a certain freshness to it? And yes, it does. In one big way. And it's a very subtle way, but it's very, very important. And that is, it is realistic drama in a courtroom. Now, courtroom dramas, they're easy to do badly because you just have the setting and you think, oh, well, it's just a courtroom. You have prosecution and defense, and you have the law, and then you just basically write your dialogue, and it's more, and a lot of it is more fueled by the emotion of the moment. But many people tend to forget that you are in a courtroom, which means you have to deal with the law. Now, what makes this film work is the source material. This was based on a best-selling book that was written by, I have my notes here, written by John D. Volcker, who was on the Michigan Supreme Court, and actually wrote it under a pseudonym. But this was based on a case that he had while he was working as a defense attorney. So you know that the legalese is all very genuine, and what makes it so compelling is that it's less about the specific event and more about the issues that it raises, because the kernel of the defense for this army soldier is that he was momentarily insane. That he was acting, or that in other words he was acting under compulsion rather than deliberately going into it. And it's all in the matter of how you phrase it, how you present your arguments, how you get testimony from witnesses, how do you cross-examine witnesses, and more importantly, how do you play it up to the jury. So there is a bit of a dramatic flair to it. But what makes it so fascinating is that while there is an element of theater, and there's no real denying that there is an aspect of theater in when you're in a court setting, it's not overdone. It's not overbaked. It's all done with a genuine and realistic deliberateness. It's deliberately real. It's calculated. And again, this is due in large part to the source material, and furthermore, it's due to the direction. It's not overemphasized, but one aspect of Otto Preminger personally is that he held a law degree. So this was something where he understood the material and knew how to play within those limits. He knew how it could work in a court setting and still be compelling, and still be a very compelling and entertaining film. This, by the way, was the film that inspired many many people to want to pursue law. Most famously, Sonia Sotomayor, who now sits at the Supreme Court of the United States. But anyways, I think it's because of that. It's because there is something very compelling about it, not just in terms of exuding emotions. I think that's what I really like about it. It's not just about emotions, and that I feel is what really separates, really makes a work distinct and stand on its own. Because I think anybody can exude emotions. It's very easy to spark an emotion, to play it up, but it's another, and then it's something else to have it be refined. So where while it may seem intense, there is some control. It doesn't go over the top, and even furthermore that it's more than just the emotions. It's also it's what you're saying, and in that sense, that's what makes it very, very fresh, especially when you look at courtroom dramas. Because, like I said before, courtroom dramas, I think, is more about the drama than it is about the case. And this is one of those cases where it's much more about the case, and even then, it's not so much about the case. It's about the very nature of the justice system, of the legal system. It's the fallibility of testimony and how you think you know, again, like for instance, you have a right to a trial by jury, and the jury it's impartial and comprises a jury of your peers. Well, as I talked about with 12 Angry Men, it's not very partial. It's anything but impartial. They're all led astray by the arguments. In fact, I didn't really get into this with 12 Angry Men. You really get the sense that they were more, chances were that the prosecution had made very stirring speeches or appealed to certain emotions, and that's kind of what they were acting on. Whereas somebody in the jury took the time to really sort out what the facts were, and does the facts add up to match the testimony? And if it doesn't, then there's reason to have reasonable doubt as to whether he's guilty. But that's what 12 Angry Men. In this one, it's not about the jury, and that's why I got both of them at this. That's another reason why I got both of them at the same time, is because I knew that they would deal with different aspects of it. Whereas 12 Angry Men dealt with specifically with the jury, Anatomy of a Murder dealt with everything else, including the what you find in the courtroom, and that's what makes it very interesting, is that it deals with that aspect. It looks at the nature of the legal system, and it's because it was written by somebody who was in that system. You know, he sat at the Supreme Court of the state of Michigan. So this is clearly written by someone who knows about the law and was willing to write it in such a way as it to be very compelling. Because this was a best-selling book. This was one of those films that took advantage of a best-selling book. So this was very popular. So this is not one of those films where it's made by a specialist for specialists. It's written and made by people who knew what they were doing and knew what they were talking about, and were able to still make it very compelling and very dramatic without losing that realism or that specialty. And that's what makes it so interesting to see. Because very often, I think most films, when they deal with specialty subjects, they're less about the subjects they're supposedly purporting. Like most films that are about college, for instance, it's less about going to college and dealing with the subjects, and it's more about the human emotions and the human drama. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have drama in it, but I think that it's, you want to know, like, you want to at least come away knowing something about the subject. You like to think that, or that if you're dealing with a professor who, like, say, knows mathematics, you want to get the feeling that he really knows mathematics, and you feel that it's more of a means to another end rather than just the subject itself. So here's a case where it's, everything about it is about the law. It's about the nature of the law. It's the nature. It looks at um, how we interpret the law, how the law is used in both the prosecution of someone or to show that someone is guilty of a charge, and likewise how the law is used to defend someone and to say that he's not guilty. And it does it, very realistically, very genuinely, but doesn't lose that drama. It's still very compelling. So it's an excellent balance between those two. It doesn't go too far into the drama. It doesn't go too far into the special. It just hits right in the middle, and it just works very well. So yes, I'm going to recommend this film, especially if you. I would especially recommend it to those who kind of roll their eyes at the thought of a courtroom drama. It's like, oh, I know how it's going to go. It's very well done. It's a testament to the source material, the direction, the performances. It's where everything comes together to form a great whole, and so and it's check it out. Anatomy of a Murder. And until next time, take care.